Will this be Alexander Ovechkin's last year in the NHL? Can the Calgary Flames take the next step forward? And do they have the worst contract in the league? And how much longer is the Dallas Stars window? And will their new head coach get them to the promised land? We've got all that and more on today's Locked On NHL podcast.
You're Locked On NHL, your daily podcast on the National Hockey League. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Gil Martin here. Welcome, everybody, to the Monday edition of the Locked On NHL podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank everyone who makes Locked On NHL your first listen every day. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts so you never miss an episode. This episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. It is my pleasure to welcome back to the show the host of Locked On Capitals, Dan Holmi. And Dan, last offseason, I think the Capitals hit a home run. They were very busy, very active, and almost everything they tried worked out. It was a lot more low-key this offseason. Why was that? And talk to me about how you judge these moves that they did make.
Well, now they have new GM Chris Patrick taking over after Brian McClellan was running the ship. In a lot of ways, I think to myself, he knew a change was coming. So that's why he brought in a lot of players last summer. I think that the Capitals were active. I think they were all in on Nikolai Ehlers. They just weren't able to come to terms with the money, that kind of thing. And they also kicked the tires on Jack Roslovic. Now, I think they're pivoting to the youth movement as the Capitals prospects. There's a lot of upside there. And, it's something that's been spoke of for years that there's a lot of young talent. Why not lean into it a little bit more? I think this is the season we're going to see what Ryan Leonard, Andrew Crystal, Ivan Miroshnichenko, these kind of guys, how are they going to look? The problem that I have with it, however, is that if it's not good enough, is Chris Patrick going to have to pick up the phone and be scrambling, trying to trade this player, that player, if it's not going to work. So it'll be interesting to see how the Capitals fare. Do they take a step forward? Do they take a step back? But as we record this in early August, it does appear that the Capitals will lean into more of the youth and hope that the veterans on the team can kind of pick up the slack elsewhere.
You talk about the veterans, obviously the biggest one, Alexander Ovechkin. A lot of speculation that this could be his last season in the NHL. He's 40 now?
He's going to be 40 in September, yes. Yeah.
So what are you hearing and what impact does that have on how the Capitals approach this season?
Well, I mean, listen, if you're a longtime Capitals fan and, covering the Capitals for Locked On, I hear a lot of viewpoints from different people. It is my belief that this will be his final season. There was an email that went out to the season ticket holders that said this was going to be the final season. And then the PR guys heard it and they reeled that in. Nothing to see here. His wife, Natsia, was on Russian media. She said this was going to be the final season, and then she backpedaled on that. All we have to hang our hat on that there is any kind of extension is the kind of ambiguous comments by Alex Ovechkin himself saying that my mind is not made up yet. Now, listen, I don't think that, you have to read into it too much. That I think that his mind is made up, and I think this is going to be his final season. He passed Wayne Gretzky. He won the Stanley Cup in 2018. It's my belief, what else is there for him left to prove? And at 40 years old, you're only going to see a depreciation over time. That is he going to sign a 1, 2, 3-year deal? That is what's being rumored out there. At 43 years old, what can you expect out of Ovi? And I don't think that he wants to go down in the category of Jaromir Jagr. And I know that 40 is not 50. I get that. But I expect him to, put up big numbers in what could ostensibly be his final season. But if you're asking me right now, I would put all my chips in on this being Alex Ovechkin's last season in the NHL.
How does that change the way the Capitals approach this season?
Well, it is interesting that you bring that up, is that they, have drafted well, the last few years here. Lyndon Lakovic, I'm talking Ryan Leonard, Andrew Crystal, that I talk about this on the show if you're an everydayer of Locked On Capitals, that as good as the Capitals are now, they're going to be even that much better in years to come just based on prospects. So what I think is going to have happen, of course, is that Tom Wilson is going to be the next captain. There's no real mystery there. And I think this team is built in a way that they can win minus Alex Ovechkin, if you can believe that, because you saw the injury that he faced when he got injured against the Utah Hockey Club at that time, missed some games, and the Capitals found a way to win without him. Now, listen, he revolutionized hockey in Washington. There is no doubt. He is going to be a Hall of Famer. There is no doubt. But at some point, you have to be willing to turn the page. I've come to terms with it as a person that's been a fan of this team for so many years. But I think that the Capitals do have the needed depth in-house. And, one of the things that Patrick talked about is we'll see how this goes. We can always make some big moves at the trade deadline in the spring if the belief is this Capitals team is on the cusp of making it to the playoffs.
Talk to me about Andrew Crystal. It seems like management is very high on him as a prospect. What are his skills and how far away is he from possibly making the big club?
One of the last players cut last season. There was not the option for him at that time to go to the AHL Hershey Bears. So he was reassigned to the Kelowna Rockets. Then he was traded out to the Spokane Chiefs and killed it. Record numbers. Worked on the things that needed to be worked on. His skating, he worked on, and some things that he can't work on. His height, we can only work on what we can work on. But he bulked up, and the belief is that he was, or the thought when observed was that he was getting pushed off the puck too easy. So he's bulked up a little bit. I think he could be a real contender for that second line left wing. Another intriguing storyline, if Connor McMichael moves to that third line center position, that position that gave the Capitals quite a bit of grief last season.
What are your biggest concerns right now as the season, training camp is roughly 6 weeks away?
The biggest things that I'm concerned about are, leaning into that youth, that on paper, these players could be good, but you don't know. It's, when we looked at Ryan Leonard last year, put up back-to-back 30-goal seasons for Boston College. And the feeling out there was that at the end of the season, he's going to join the Capitals. And he only put up one empty netter. So I think it's important to limit expectations. It's not always a shot straight to the moon. That I am concerned about the inexperience and the fact that Chris Patrick did not go out and make any bigger moves, an elite goal scorer, because make no mistake about it, the Capitals would be in a much better position now had they signed Nikolai Ehlers or a player, someone like that. So I'm cautiously optimistic that, like we spoke about Crystal, who put up big numbers for Kelowna and the Spokane Chiefs. You take a look at Crystal, Miroshnichenko, that it's going to be their time to shine. And don't blow it, kids. This is your opportunity. One of the knocks against the Capitals for years is the reluctance that they wanted to squeeze as much juice out of that veteran core, kind of like what the Pittsburgh Penguins have done and are now in a real mess, that I think the Capitals were proactive and, great players around them. Like you spoke about, the moves that were made last summer. Pierre-Luc Dubois, had a breakout season. And just everyone last year that put up career numbers, that I'm feeling optimistic, big picture, but cautiously optimistic on the youth players that will be added to the team in the fall.
If there's a move, what do you think they would be looking to add between now and opening night?
A top six scoring forward, right? A proven commodity, the Nikolai Ehlers-esque type of move. And the problem is, and I'm not going to call it a problem, it is kind of a problem, is that they don't want to move any prospects. They don't want to move anything like that because the Capitals have had issues with that in the past, being in the win now mode, that we want this big shiny toy, so we're just going to deplete the farm to get that. So, but what happens? You play that out a couple of years, your prospects are depleted. So I think that the Capitals did want to make a big moves. I think they were all in on a Nikolai Ehlers. It's just they didn't want to have to give up a Leonard, a Crystal, something like that. So they're all in. Fingers crossed, toes crossed that 25-26 will be a good season for the Capitals.
All right, Dan, why don't you tell our viewers and our listeners where they could find the podcast and where they could find you on social media?
Yeah, so you can find me on Twitter. It's at DanCaps218. You can find the show on Twitter. It's at Locked On Caps, of course, available on Amazon, Fire TV channels, and YouTube, and wherever you find your podcasts.
All right, Dan, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Ever wish managing your money felt easier? Well, with Monarch Money, it can. Whether you're growing your savings or planning a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is more than a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You could track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So in addition to managing your money, you're also building wealth. And I know that if you're trying to keep an account with your wife, your husband, your significant other, it makes it so much easier to have all this information in one place with Monarch Money. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com. Code LOCKEDONNHL for half off your first year. It is my pleasure to welcome back to the show the host of Locked On Flames, Jess Belmosto. And Jess, it's been a relatively quiet offseason for the Calgary Flames. Did that surprise you at all?
Yes and no. I think that the Flames have made it very clear that they are only doing moves that they see necessary, which aren't necessarily the moves that fans would make if they were in Craig Conroy's position. I thought by this time we would have seen Rasmus Andersson traded, but instead he's on Twitter liking hate tweets about himself. So, I mean, hey, whatever works. But I guess I thought we might see a trade or two more, even outside of Andersson.
With all of this going on with Rasmus Andersson, what kind of future does he have with the team?
Honestly, at the season-ending exit interviews, it very much gave, this is the last time you'll talk to me as a Flame. But then at the same time, Craig Conroy has said, yeah, we're fine going into this season with him. But that's just a distraction, in my opinion. It doesn't make sense, and you are taking a lot of risk in terms of injury with that as well.
Obviously, goaltending is an issue, backup goaltending specifically. There was a change there. Talk to me about it, and do you think the team is better off with their goaltending depth now than they were a year ago?
I think it's too soon to tell. I think that Dan Vladar he was consistently inconsistent. So it was a ride whenever he was in net. And obviously, even when he was backing up Markstrom, he didn't see too many starts this season. And I don't blame him for wanting more of a starting role. But I think that Devin Cooley did pretty well in the AHL last year. And the new goaltender that they just signed from Russia, who's formerly played in the NHL, it seems like it's open season for that backup spot. And I like it, but I don't think I think they're going to lose more games this season.
Because of the backup goaltender.
Yeah.
And then obviously, if Wolf gets hurt, how disastrous would that be for this team?
I honestly, yes, Dustin Wolf being hurt would be pretty bad, but it would be very good for the Flames in terms of more losses and climbing up, the tankathon.
You think that's the direction this team probably should go in?
Yes. I don't think that they will ever lose on purpose or anything like that, but I do think that they need to continue to have more seasons like they did not this past season, but the season before, where they were able to pick 9th overall and get Zane Parekh. And I think that a few more top 10 picks, maybe even a top 5, would put this team where ownership maybe thinks they are.
There have been a number of lists coming out about the best and worst contracts in the NHL, and Jonathan Huberdeau topped the list of worst contracts for one of these organizations. How bad is this contract, and does he belong at the top of that list?
Yes, he belongs at the top of the list. He hasn't cracked 60 points, and he's making $10.5 million a year. That's not what you want to see. I definitely think it's slightly better because the cap went up. But if we didn't see any sort of movement there, obviously, like, it's still bad, but it's not as bad. Obviously, you never want to see a player on your team on that list. And I guess I'm glad that's the only bad one, even if it's the worst.
Any chance that how many years left on that deal? Any chance of movement there, or is it so bad no one will touch it?
I think it's so bad no one will touch it. I want to say there's 6 years left.
Wow.
It's up in 2030. So 5-6 seasons left. I could definitely see this being an LTIR situation way further down the road. Last season was nice. It was great to see him go out there and hit 28 goals, and just look more confident, and not even just with his scoring, but with his passing as well. There was definitely some flashes of vintage Huberdeau in there that I would like to see again this year.
So training camp is about 6 weeks away. Hard to believe. We're almost getting to the start of another season. What do you see as the team's biggest needs and concerns as of right now?
They need to trade some forwards. They have far too many wingers and not enough roster spaces. And if they think that they're going to compete with the same group that they did last year, I have some news for them. You have to score goals, and Kadri and Huberdeau leading your goal scoring is great. The fact that Kadri scored north of 30 again, great. But you need to find a way to integrate more of your youth. You need to really figure out any of these contracts you can move and just make the gutsy decision.
Who are some of the players that you think are movable at this point that maybe before the season starts, we could see them making a move?
I think Blake Coleman, just because he is a player that has obviously won. He is still productive. He contributes, on the score sheet and very well defensively. I think he is a player that every team would like to add at the deadline. Like, if they find themselves in a spot like, okay, we're going to go for it and make a true run for the cup. He's the type of player, at least myself as a general manager, would like to add. I could possibly see them trading maybe Ryan Lomberg or Adam Klapka. I mean, both are two huge personalities and locker room guys. Klapka was getting hot towards the end of the season, but at the end of the day, there's better players that you can start to move forward in their development.
And who are some of those prospects that the team is high on that are close to being NHL ready?
Yeah, I think Adar Suniev, who played at the University of Massachusetts, Amherst last season before signing his pro contract. Just absolutely phenomenal there. Consistent scoring, and he was able to squeak one game in the final game of the season. And I mean, obviously, it is a very small sample size, but to me, he would probably be a little bit more of an ad than Ryan Lomberg.
All right. Well, Jess, why don't you tell our viewers and our listeners where they could find the podcast and where they could find you on social media?
Yeah, so you can find Locked On Flames wherever you get your podcasts and YouTube. We're back to 3 shows a week through the off season, and it's always a fun time to do some research and deep dives and speculation. And you can follow me on Twitter at Jess Belmosto.
All right, Jess, thanks so much. Always a pleasure.
Thanks, Gil.
It is my pleasure to welcome back to the show the host of Locked On Stars, Joey Erickson. And Joey, it hasn't been a dull off season in Dallas. A new coach. Were you surprised by the head coaching change, and what are your thoughts about it?
Well, I think everybody was a bit in shock to some degree. Maybe not after what transpired at the end of the Western Conference Final with Pete DeBoer sort of throwing Jake Oettinger under the bus for what transpired during that series. But the Stars got rid of a guy with the second best win percentage in franchise history. There's a bit of a risk if you're Jim Nill to get rid of a coach that has had so much success over the last 3 seasons in Dallas, whether or not they got to a Stanley Cup or not. But I'm pretty bullish on Glen Gulutzan. I think it'll be really interesting, and he made it pretty clear it's going to be a collaborative process. The Stars were also able to promote their AHL head coach, Neil Graham, to be an assistant, which will be a great experience for him. So the Stars are able to hold on to him as well. He was a candidate that I think a lot of Stars fans were hoping may get the gig, but they end up reuniting with Glen Gulutzan, and he made it very clear it's going to be a collaborative process with Neil Graham, defensive head coach Alain Nasreddine, and that's going to be a bit of a change from Pete DeBoer, whereas, Pete DeBoer had systems and he had assistant coaches, but his assistants sort of ran it the way he wanted in a lot of ways. And it seems like this is going to be a collaborative process. And he mentioned that he wants to tailor the system to the personnel of the Dallas Stars. So it's going to be really, really intriguing, especially the first 20 games or so, about how the Stars can adapt to this new style, new philosophy. But you don't have to reinvent the wheel either, right? The Stars are a pretty good team. They've won a lot of games recently. It's about trying to get over that hump.
So what do you expect to be different on the ice based on, the talent? If he's going to tailor his system to the talent, what do you expect that system to look like?
Yeah, I'm going to be fascinated to see what the Stars sort of employ defensively, just because the Stars went through some changes in the middle of the year last year as well, where they went to a really heavy man-to-man style, and with the Stars personnel, especially on the back end, just guys that weren't particularly mobile. It seemed to give them a lot of fits. Now they did make some subtractions this offseason with Matt Dumba, and Niels Lundqvist is a smaller guy but more mobile that may get some more playing time under Glen Gulutzan, because I don't know if Pete DeBoer was the biggest fan, but I think offensively it's going to stay somewhat the same in a lot of ways. Like Dallas was a heavy puck possession team. They were really good off the rush, and I'm sure Glen Gulutzan wants to keep that innate, almost keep that identity of Dallas, but just tweak some stuff. And he did mention, which raised a lot of eyebrows, and I think it's something you want all coaches to say nowadays. Like, they want to turn up the physicality a bit. But he mentioned doing that as the season kind of wears along. If it's one criticism a lot of people have had about the Stars fans in particular, just when it gets to the nitty gritty of that Western Conference Final, they just don't seem tough enough. And sometimes it's a trigger word in today's NHL. You got to be tough. Everybody wants a Sam Bennett. And the Stars just really struggled to play that tough, grinded out nose hockey. And Glen Gulutzan mentioned throughout the regular season in his introductory press conference, he just wants to turn it up a bit here and there, just so they're more prepared when they get to that point, when they get to the Stanley Cup playoffs. So maybe there's going to be a change in philosophy, especially on the forecheck. He said he's going to change up the forecheck, and we'll see how that all transpires. But I don't have to have the solutions for that, thankfully. I just get to talk about it, Gil.
Do they have the personnel to be more physical?
See, that's a phenomenal question. I don't think so. But I don't know if that's necessarily a bad thing either, right? It's always trying to marry the two together, right? The skill and the physical toughness. Like you look at the bottom six, like the Stars have a lot of similar archetypes. Sam Steele, kind of around 6 foot, not overly huge. Maverick Bork's another smaller guy. They went out and got Radek Faksa, who was with the Stars for a decade. He was their fourth line center. Plays a decent physically game. It's not like they're going to run around and just bully teams. The Stars just aren't going to be able to do that. That's not going to be their personnel. But I think they can make a more concerted effort, right? I think it's that conscious effort of finishing checks and being a bit tougher to play against. So we'll see how that all fits. But like the Stars have a ton of offensive talent. They should be able to score, and they're going to get a full 82 of Mikko Rantanen, which should be rather fun as well.
No doubt about that. You've got Mikko Rantanen, you've got Jake Ottinger. You mentioned the offensive talent. How big of a window does this team have as a Stanley Cup contender? Because they've been that way for a few years now.
Yeah, you mentioned the core guys, right? The Stars have a great core to build around, and now it's about trying to find those pieces. And they've been close, right, over the last few seasons. I was thinking about this the other week. They're sort of turning into the San Jose Sharks a bit. If you recall from sort of the middle of the 2000s, like they were always in the hunt. They did get to the Cup final that one year, but failed, and sort of similar with the Stars in 2020, although that team was a bit of a fluke to get there. Huberdeau was pretty dang good, and he just retired recently. But anyways, I digress from that. I think the window is open, I think, clearly for the next 4 or 5 years, just because you do have Wyatt Johnston under contract. You do have Mikko Rantanen now for 8 years, Rope for another 8 years. Like those are some talent. Those are some premier talent you're going to have around. As long as you got those guys around, you're going to be good. And don't forget Miro Heiskanen as well, the Stars' best defenseman. And hopefully, if they don't have any more contract disputes for next season, like Jason Robertson, Thomas Harley could be around for a long time as well. And we all know the great improvements he made last season. So the core is there. Now can they build around it? And they're going to have to ask some guys to play in elevated roles. Like can those guys produce to get over that hump? At the end of the day, I think the Stars and all teams are looking for that depth to be productive and probably some moves at the trade deadline as well.
I mentioned Jake Ottinger before. Mm-hmm. The way that, Peter DeBoer and he sort of had that conflict at the end of the playoffs. Is he the goalie who can get you to the Cup final to win a cup?
Yeah, I truly believe that. I know there's a lot of critics out there, and I think that's fair. But you could say that about a lot of goaltenders. You could look at Igor Shesterkin. You could look at Connor Hellebuck, who the Stars knocked out. Yep. He's a world beater for years, and he doesn't look the same in the postseason. I mean, Jake Ottinger, frankly, has looked better in the Stanley Cup playoffs than Connor Hellebuck ever has, but he's not going to get rid of the stigma until he does it. In a lot of ways, they were just astronomical expectations after what he did in that series years ago against Calgary, in a series he didn't even win, but he played so damn well that everybody's expecting that consistently, and that's just not a realistic goal. And I've always made the comparison to Jake Ottinger to a Dallas Cowboy quarterback in Dak Prescott. I think there's a lot of similarities there. He's just not going to get any respect until he does it. Although Jake Ottinger, if you just look at accomplishments, has accomplished more than Dak Prescott in their respective sports. A lot different, of course, but he's not going to be known as someone that can get it done until he does, and that's hard. But I truly believe he is. I think you look at rankings. I know you don't have to take those into consideration a lot, but you look from NHL player surveys and stuff, like he ranks somewhere within, 6 to 12, like more like 6 to 10. It's pretty good. Everybody's looking for a number one goaltender. Those are hard to find. The Stars have him. And it seems like he's just not good enough. I'd rather have that than, Anton Hudobin, or you're trying to find a goaltender. There's teams like have been going on 15 years still looking for their guy. And hopefully he'll get the job done.
All right, Joey, why don't you tell our viewers and our listeners where they could find the podcast and where they could find you on social media?
Absolutely. You can follow me at Joey the Jet 19 on Twitter and all that good stuff. And then follow the show at Locked On Stars. And of course, we're free and available wherever you get your podcast and YouTube as well. Thanks for having me on, Gil. Always a pleasure. And hockey's right around the corner.
Can't wait. Thanks, Joey. I want to thank my guests. I want to thank Dan Holmi of Locked On Capitals, Jess Belmosto of Locked On Flames, and Joey Erickson of Locked On Stars for joining me today. I'm Gil Martin. I host the Monday edition of the Locked On NHL podcast, and I co-host the Friday edition along with Rachel Donner. Don't forget, we are here every day, Monday through Saturday, bringing you the biggest stories from around the NHL. So hit the like button and subscribe so you never miss an episode. Have a great day, everybody. Stay safe. Thanks so much for watching and listening to the Locked On NHL podcast.